Je vous présente Olivier de Zenica. C'est eux qui commanditent en fait l'enregistrement des vidéos. So I present you Olivier from Zenica. They're sponsoring the recordings of the videos that will be available after the conference on YouTube.
Merci. Merci à tous. Moi, je vais le faire en français, c'est le plus simple pour moi. Donc Zenica, en fait, on est une entreprise de services numériques. Donc on est pas mal sur les techs, comme vous pouvez le constater. On est aussi, on fait pas mal de formations. Durant le ConFoo, on va avoir 2 personnes qui vont faire des talks. Il y en a un qui va être aujourd'hui Anna Filina, je pense qu'il y en a beaucoup d'entre vous qui la connaissent. Et après, il y a Aurélien Loyer, qui est là-bas dans la régie. Salut! À côté de ça, on a un stand. ConFoo, notre stand, on a pris un thème Star Wars parce qu'on est un peu geek, on aime bien ça. Sur notre stand, il y a des petits jeux concours, donc si vous voulez passer, puis on pourra vous donner plus de détails sur qu'est-ce qu'on fait chez Zenica, qu'est-ce qu'on fait à Montréal chez Zenica, parce que c'est un groupe français, on est 450 dans le monde, mais à Montréal, on est une vingtaine. Donc si vous voulez venir discuter avec nous, ça nous ferait plaisir. Il y a pas mal de personnes qui sont avec nous sur le stand. Il y a des développeurs, il y a aussi des speakers, donc ça nous ferait plaisir. Et puis, profitez bien de la journée. Maintenant, j'introduis David Neal. It's for you, man. Merci.
Good morning, y'all. I am so honored to be here, and thank you so much for allowing me to present some information to y'all this morning. As you can tell, I'm from the South, and I speak redneck English. I don't know if that helps you at all, but I work for this awesome company called Okta. We do single sign-on and security and authorization, authentication. Really awesome company. But I'm here to talk about some lean and agile principles that I picked up over the years. I used to work for this company called LeanKit, and it was an incredible startup. It was a really awesome place to work. And when I joined the company around 2013, we had about 20 employees, and we grew really fast. We grew really quickly, and we had this really awesome product around Kanban that I was proud to represent. Around 2015, we had this big new feature that we were working on for the construction industry. And we decided that we had some extra time, and so we thought, well, you know what? Well, let's go ahead and add these new features to our IT market as well. And we did, and that ended up taking a little bit more time than we expected. And we thought, well, since we're in here, why don't we go ahead and add these new features to our mobile app? And we did, and it took more time than we expected. And we thought, well, let's go ahead and work with marketing and sales to create the collateral and training material that we need for these new features, and we did that, and that took more time. And we thought, well, we're in the middle of rebranding our product and our company, so let's go ahead and add these new colors and new logos, and it's just piling up. And we thought, well, we've got a big conference coming up, and let's just roll all this new stuff into a big marketing splash. Let's have a PR event, and all that work took more time than we expected. Everything took a lot more coordination and between a lot of teams. There were a whole lot of meetings and a lot of long hours. And in the end, we pulled it off. We had our big launch. We released the new versions of our products. We had our PR, and we were so excited to make a big splash in the market, and we partied and celebrated our success. And we learned, let's never do that again. That was terrible. It's not that what we did was bad. We had some really smart people doing the best that they knew how, giving the information that they knew. And But similar to the saying that a cobbler's children never, don't have shoes, as we grew in our company, we just naively assumed that people would pick up on the lean, agile principles and practices that, the core of us that started the company understood and maintained. And what I have found and believe to be true, that's universal across any type of organization, is that people really do want to do their best work. And people don't want to fail, and people want an environment where they can thrive. And reflecting over the last 10 years or more of agile software development, I've come to the conclusion that respect for people is the fundamental principle. Respect requires a company to remain true to the goal of a sustainable workplace where employees can thrive. Having respect requires that we listen and have empathy with the people that we work with. Having mutual respect with the people that you work with, brings people together, and you fight for one another as a team, and it seeks to promote a healthy work place, a well-being and commitment to reduce friction and wasteful activities in an environment. One of my favorite quotes: most of the time when things go wrong, it's not the individuals that are at fault. It's usually the system under which those people work under. The system that's in place either allows or even encourages the wrong behavior. So in the instance of the company that I used to work for, we discovered that we needed to fix our system to practice what we preach about agile and lean, and we needed something that was easy to communicate, easy to understand, and easy to remember. And what we came up with is FSGD. This became a thinking tool to help us to make better decisions. And FSGD stands for frequent, small, good, and decoupled, which we affectionately pronounced FSGD. FSGD became our thinking tool that we use to manage our work and to make decisions with every team, not just software development, but in marketing and sales, operations, accounting, and our leadership. Frequent is not just about speed, but about consistency and predictability. Not releasing frequently can make our customers upset. And your customer is not just, the person that's buying your service or buying your product at the end of the delivery. It's anyone in your entire value stream. You probably have many downstream customers in your company or your vendors or whomever that deserve your respect. Maybe your downstream customer is another development team, and there's this really big guy on that team that you don't want to upset. And operations and support, marketing, DevOps, sales engineers, customer success, these are all your customers that are affected by the decisions that you and your team make. So you ought to have respect for them as well. So releasing frequently is, kind of no surprise. It's about getting feedback very quickly about, the work that you're doing, the value that you're adding to your product. And releasing frequently allows you to manage the priority of work. You suddenly know that, hey, some of these things that we've talked about doing are more important than we first realized. The reality is there's changing business needs and opportunities that come along, things that we thought were so important 6 months ago, in light of all the new knowledge that we have, maybe not be so important that we used to think. Critical issues and detours and unplanned work come along. And also, when you start a new project or you're adding a new feature to your product or whatever it is that you're doing, you have this hypothesis. You think, well, this is what we think we're trying to build, but weeks into the, maybe halfway through the original scope of the work that you're doing, you may realize, because you've been releasing frequently and getting that feedback, you may figure out that we're done. We don't have to spend another, 3 months working on this new feature. We're already there where customers are getting a lot of value out of the product. And you can then move on and focus on other things that are more important instead of adding more things to that, polish to that one thing that's actually working fine. Releasing frequently also has this awesome byproduct of trust. So a company, your customer gains confidence by seeing you releasing frequently all the time. They become very forgiving about the mistakes that you make because they're confident that you're going to, quickly, make changes and fix those mistakes. And they trust that you're going to eventually get it right. More companies are releasing more frequently. Even Microsoft that used to release a new version of their products about every 3 years, whether they needed to or not. And, seeing a company like this move to like monthly deliveries and weekly hot fixes, turning that big ship, and it has enabled them to do amazing things like, raised hopes that they'll be relevant again. It's pretty awesome. So frequent can't happen without things being small. And of course, the opposite of small is big. Imagine a highway full of big tractor trailers. They're slow to start, they're slow to stop. And what happens when you have a highway full of these big trucks? It's a parking lot. It becomes impossible to, when you got more and more of these big trucks on the road, the friction becomes, a gridlock. But contrast that with, say a motorcycle. They can't carry as much, but they're more nimble. They can start and stop faster. They can move around obstacles. And that's kind of what we're talking about. It's really queuing theory. Remember your queuing formulas from school? No. We absolutely need things to be small and have slack in our system. It's true for fluid dynamics. It's true for electricity. It's true for traffic management. It's true for people too. It's true for any, sequential system, and that includes projects and software development. Now you might be thinking, aren't there things that are just naturally big, like architecture and design? Well, I submit to you that there are things that are notoriously big, but they don't necessarily have to be. Our experience is that when you peel back the onion and you start to find creative ways to break things down, you can come to the root cause of what's making something look so large in the first place. You may have heard of the 5 whys, a technique for exploring a problem until you arrive at the underlying issue. So continuing to dig deep and challenge assumptions can lead to a discovery of underlying systematic issues that are creating constraints on your work. What do you do when something turns out to be bigger than you estimated? Well, if breaking it down doesn't seem to be immediately apparent, you can put that back on the queue and work on and focus on working on smaller things that you can get done quicker. And similar to sleeping on it, let the problem simmer for a while, and maybe and usually a creative solution will come to you down the road. Okay, so we've talked about frequent and small. Now let's talk about good. The opposite of good is garbage. We don't want to create garbage products, but we also don't want to get bogged down going too far to the other extreme. We don't want, you may have heard that perfection is the enemy of progress, or in software we talk a lot about gold plating. We really like to seriously geek out about the software that we create and maybe over-engineer occasionally. One of the founders of LinkedIn said, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, You've launched too late. Imagine, you remember the first iPhone? We know now, looking back, that the iPhone has, revolutionized the smartphone industry. But did you know that the first version of the iPhone, not only did it have no keyboard and stylus, which was, mind-blowing for everyone that had a BlackBerry or, Trio or something like that. But the first iPhone also did not have multimedia messaging. It didn't have a GPS. It didn't have 3G, so it was really slow. There was no SDK, so that meant there was no app store. You couldn't create your own applications or get new applications. It didn't have basic features like cut, copy, and paste. But, Apple was smart enough to release the phone, almost as we look at it now, that's half-baked. There's a lot of things missing there. But they captured the market with, something that was good enough. And finding that balance between good enough and gold plating is a really hard balance to achieve. And so in product development at Lean Kit, we came up with our own acronym to help our software teams define what is good enough. We repurposed TLDR, which on the internet means too long, didn't read. And so we used that acronym and became our own. T stands for tested. Every new feature includes sane tests around the behavior, and each bug fix, has regression tests to guard against that bug in the future. L stands for logged. It's not only about debug messages and what's going on in the application, but we believed it was extremely important to log the behavior and the actions that were going on in our software so that we can understand the context of things. In Agile, we've heard, over the years that the measure of success is the delivery of working software. Well, I submit to you that it's not just the delivery of working software, it's critically important to measure the usage of that software, to know which features are being used and how they're, the context in which they're used. Common usage patterns. You can't make good decisions about your product unless you have the real data to back it up. On D is for documented, and we're not talking about volumes of documentation that no one's ever going to read. We're talking about practical documentation, maybe in the form of a README or a wiki, that's going to help your new team members as well as your future self. Like don't you just hate it when your future self is mad at your old self? Like, daggum, why did I do that? Or how did I do that? I wake up the next day and I've cleared the screen. What did I do yesterday? I don't know. So TLDR, documented, means how to build and test something, how to set it up, config options and examples, API usage. These are practical things that's going to help you in the future with the software that you're creating. And then R stands for reviewed. Code has to be checked out and reviewed by someone else other than the person who created it. And if the pull request fails to satisfy any of the T, L, and D, the tested, logged, and documented, then that pull request is rejected. And the pull requests and the reviews, they help with not just finding issues in the software, but they help with mentoring, for cross training, for team building. We would have things we call PR parties, where the whole team would get together and we'd review the code together. And of course, hey, sometimes we'd find bugs. That's really cool. So what do we do about legacy code? Well, we believed in the Scout rule that you leave it better than you found it. Just practical applications of TLDR, which, whenever it made sense to create those tests, to add more logging, to remove dead code when we see it, that kind of thing. And last of all, D stands for decoupled. And decoupled is the opposite of coordinated, requiring a lot of time and, more than one team to come to a decision. It leads to highly coordinated work, leads to a lot of meetings and a lot of friction and a lot of delays. In a system, it's usually the handoffs that are causing the most issues. But it's not just coordinated work, it's also, you don't want to create work that adversely impacts another team. It's this idea of do no harm. Anyone remember Windows 95? The relaunch of 95? It was a really big deal. There was Jay Leno, there was Rolling Stones, Start Me Up, and so forth. I mean, just look at this guy. Don't you know that he wrote a big fat check for 2 copies of Windows 95, and he can't wait to get home and get on CompuServe and tell his buddies, about his new purchase. So that old model of Windows, Microsoft releasing operating systems is like the epitome of highly coordinated, highly coupled work. How long did it take from when the last line of code was written until this guy's holding a box in his hands? That's, months, right? It's kind of crazy to think about. So in essence, decoupled is in do no harm, means that teams are able to release independently of each other. Every new feature we would add behind a feature flag so we can turn that feature on and off. Sometimes we would only enable new features for a select set of customers, and maybe like a beta test or a pilot, or do A/B testing. And sometimes we would ship new features dark, meaning all the code to support that feature is out in production, but it's not turned on yet because maybe there's some other work that has to be done by other teams. And that's a way that each team can continue to move at the pace that they need to and deliver software. Fizz good became part of our vocabulary. Big problems, we would say, how can we fizz good this? Or this doesn't fizz good. How can we approach this so that we don't do any harm to other teams and to our customers? My hope is that frequent, small, good, and decoupled has got you thinking about ways that you might be able to improve your process so that your work can fizz good too. Regardless of the work you do, I believe that we have an incredible opportunity to make a positive impact on our workplaces, our communities, and the entire world through technology. And I hope that you take these things and the things that you're learning at this conference, and you go and whatever it is that you do something awesome. Thank you.